This isn't just a story about a bad day at the airport. It's a story about a moment of casual cruelty, a snapshot of power abused at Gate B-19 of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. It's about a 17-year-old girl named Maya Davis, who was just trying to get to her Juilliard audition. And it's about a gate agent named Brenda Soulful, who decided that this black teen didn't look like she belonged in the pre-boarding line. What Brenda didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the quiet, polite mother Maya was frantically texting was Alani Davis, the United States Secretary of Transportation, and the full weight of the federal government was about to come crashing down. The air in Concourse B of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was thick with the smell of Cinnabon and stale coffee. It was 5:45 a.m., but the terminal was already a frantic river of humanity. People slept in awkward positions across rows of steel and vinyl chairs, while others, fueled by nervous energy and overpriced lattes, power walked toward their designated gates. At Gate B-19, 17-year-old Maya Davis felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. She wasn't a nervous flyer, not really. But this flight, Global West Airlines Flight 1412 to LaGuardia, wasn't just a flight, it was a portal. In New York, a panel of the most formidable musicians in the world was waiting to hear her play, an audition at the Juilliard School. Maya was a cellist, and her cello, a 19th century French instrument that was her most prized possession, was her partner. It was nestled securely in its hard-shell carbon fiber case, a bulky, awkward shape that was an extension of her own body. The case was plastered with fragile stickers, but Maya knew those were optimistic prayers, not guarantees. She clutched her boarding pass, seat 12A, and more importantly, the bright red pre-board stamp her mother had ensured was on her ticket. Her mother, Alani Davis, was a logistical wizard. She was the kind of person who confirmed and then double confirmed. Maya had the email from Global West's Special Assistance Desk, the one that explicitly approved her request to board early to safely stow her instrument, which was flying on its own paid-for ticket in the seat beside her. Maya checked her phone. A text from her mom. Mom, landed in D.C., meeting all day. Call me when you get to NYC. You've got this. Play from your heart. I love you. Maya smiled. I love you too. Trying to board soon. She lined up near the podium, keeping herself and her cello respectfully out of the main walkway. At the gate counter, two agents were manning the fort. One was a younger man, Scott Palmer, who seemed more interested in his phone than the passengers. The other was the lead agent, a woman in her late 50s with a stiff perm and a name tag that read Brenda. Brenda Soulful was a 22-year veteran of Global West, and she ran Gate B-19 like her own personal fiefdom. She had the weary, cynical expression of someone who had seen every trick in the book. She typed with furious, two-fingered pecks, her voice a monotone drone as she answered a passenger's question with a curt, "No, that's a final." Maya watched Brenda. She saw her wave through an elderly couple in wheelchairs with a saccharine sweet, "You have a wonderful flight, darlings." She saw her give a friendly, familiar nod to a man in a pilot's uniform who was deadheading in first class. Then Brenda's eyes landed on Maya. It was a flicker, nothing more. A quick, dismissive glance that took in Maya's distressed jeans, her Howard University sweatshirt, her other top choice, her AirPods, and the massive cello case. Maya saw the micro-expression, a slight purse of the lips, a subtle, almost imperceptible tensing of the shoulders. Brenda looked away, back to her screen. Maya's stomach knot tightened again. She'd felt that look before. It was the "you don't belong here" look, the "you're a problem" look. She took a deep, calming breath, just as her instructor had taught her. Center yourself. Don't engage with the noise. Focus on the music. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen." Brenda's voice crackled over the PA, suddenly loud and sharp. "We are now inviting our active duty military personnel, families traveling with small children under the age of 6, and any passengers requiring special assistance to begin our pre-boarding process for Flight 1412 to LaGuardia." This was it. Maya adjusted the strap of her backpack, gripped the handle of her cello case, and stepped forward. making eye contact with Brenda and offering a small, polite smile. She was the first one in the pre-board line. Brenda Soulful looked up from her computer, and her face hardened into a mask of professional obstruction. The storm had arrived. "Can I help you?" Brenda's voice was flat, devoid of the sweetness she had used for the elderly couple. "Hi," Maya said, her voice clear and polite. She held out her boarding pass and her passport. "I'm Maya Davis. I'm pre-boarding with my cello." Brenda didn't take the boarding pass. She didn't even look at it. Her eyes were fixed on Maya, a look of profound, weary skepticism. "Pre-boarding is for passengers who need assistance," Brenda said, emphasizing the last word as if Maya couldn't possibly understand its meaning. "Families with children, people in wheelchairs." "Yes, ma'am," Maya said, her politeness unwavering. She was used to this, to having to explain. "My instrument is fragile, and it's flying on its own ticket. I have the confirmation right here. I just need a few extra moments to get it stowed safely in seat 12B. She held up her phone, the email from Global West visible on the screen. Brenda waved a dismissive hand, a gesture of such sharp, sudden contempt it made Maya flinch. "I don't need to see your email. I need to see you, and you look perfectly healthy to me. You're not in a wheelchair, are you?" The line behind Maya was growing. A man with a cane, a mother wrangling a toddler in a stroller. They were all waiting. Maya could feel their eyes on her. "No, ma'am, but the policy—" "I know the policy, honey," Brenda snapped, her voice rising. The honey was a weapon. "The policy is at my discretion, and my discretion says you're trying to cut the line, just like everyone else." Scott, the other agent, finally looked up from his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "She's got a point. If we let everyone with a guitar on first, we'd never get off the ground." "It's a cello," Maya said, her cheeks burning, "and it has a paid ticket. It's not a carry-on." "It's an it, and you're a you," Brenda said, leaning forward. Her voice dropped to a low, conspiratorial growl. "And you are holding up my boarding process, which is a violation of federal regulations. Now I need you to step aside and wait for your zone to be called." "But they'll be boarding zone 1. They'll all be trying to get past me in the aisle while I'm trying to secure it. The confirmation said, I don't care what your email said." Brenda's mask of professionalism was gone. This was personal. "Are you deaf?" I said, "Step aside. You people are always trying to find a way to bend the rules. It's exhausting." "You people." The words hung in the air, electric and toxic. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. It was no longer about the cello. It was no longer about the rules. It was about her face, her hair, her sweatshirt. I'm not trying to bend any rules," Maya whispered, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "I'm just trying to follow the instructions I was given." "Then here's an instruction," Brenda said, her eyes like chips of ice. "Go to the back of the line, or I will have you removed from this flight." "This is ridiculous," Maya said, a new cold anger replacing the humiliation. "I have a right to board. Here is my pass." She tried to hand the boarding pass to Brenda again. Brenda looked at the outstretched hand, then at Maya's face, and then she did something that escalated the situation beyond repair. She held up her hand, palm out, like a crossing guard stopping traffic. "Don't you dare try to hand me that," she hissed. "Scott, call airport security. This passenger is being non-compliant and disruptive." "What?" Maya was stunned. "I'm not disruptive. I'm just trying to show you my ticket." "I'm calling them right now," Scott said, his thumb already dialing. The smirk was gone, replaced by a look of self-important gravity. "She's refusing a crew member's instruction." "This is insane," Maya said, her voice finally rising. She fumbled for her phone. I'm texting my mom." "Oh, you're texting your mommy." Brenda let out a short, barking laugh. "Good. Tell her you're about to be arrested for interfering with a flight crew. Now step away from my podium. You are a security risk." The word security risk echoed. Passengers backed away from Maya as if she were contagious. The mother with the toddler pulled her child close. Maya stood alone, her cello case feeling like an anchor, as 2 Atlanta police officers, their hands resting on their belts, rounded the corner and headed directly for her. The 2 officers, one a tall white man named Officer Miller, and the other an older black man, Officer Washington, approached with practiced, weary expressions. This was gate drama. They dealt with it a dozen times a day. "Ma'am, what's the problem here?" Officer Miller asked, his voice aimed at Brenda, but his eyes on Maya. "This passenger," Brenda said, pointing. "The victim. She refused to follow instructions, tried to force her way onto the jet bridge. She's been disruptive, she's holding up my flight, and she's refusing to leave the boarding area. I want her removed." It was a cascade of lies, delivered with the smooth confidence of a practiced performer. "That's not true," Maya said, her voice shaking. "I just wanted to show her my pre-boarding pass. I have an instrument. Here." She held out her phone and boarding pass to Officer Washington. He glanced at it, then looked at Brenda. "Brenda, he's got a pre-board stamp and an email." Brenda's eyes narrowed. She had not expected this. "He? That's a she, officer, and that stamp is irrelevant. I am the final authority on this gate, and my authority says she's a disruption. She yelled at me. She threatened me. She's unstable. I don't feel safe with her on my aircraft." The unstable, threatened me, don't feel safe combo. The trifecta. Maya knew what those words meant when spoken by a white woman about a black person. Officer Washington sighed. His job wasn't to interpret airline policy, it was to de-escalate. "Ma'am," he said to Maya, his voice kind but firm, "this is airline property. If the gate agent denies you boarding, I can't force her to let you on. You're going to have to come with us back to the main desk to get this sorted out." "But my flight, my audition." Tears welled, hot and angry. "She's lying. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten anyone." "I'm sure we can get it sorted out," Officer Washington said, his hand gesturing for her to move. "But right now you're causing a scene. People are filming." Maya looked around. He was right. Several phones were pointed her way, recording her humiliation. The river of passengers was now a stagnant pond, all eyes on the disruptive black girl being confronted by police. "Now, are you going to come with us, or am I going to have to detain you?" Officer Miller said, his tone less patient. Defeated, Maya nodded. The tears spilled over. "Okay." She picked up her cello. The walk away from gate B19, past the staring, judging faces, was the longest walk of her life. She was escorted, like a criminal, back through the terminal to the main Global West customer service desk. Behind her, she heard Brenda's voice, triumphant, back on the PA. "We will now be boarding Zone 1. Zone 1 only." The customer service desk was its own circle of hell, a 30-person line. Maya was taken to a small, sterile office just behind it. Officer Miller and Officer Washington stood by the door. A harried-looking station manager, Richard Jenkins, was summoned. "What's the issue?" Richard asked, not looking up from his tablet. "Brenda at B19 denied her boarding," Officer Miller said. "Said she was disruptive. Refused to follow crew instructions." Richard finally looked at Maya. He sighed. "Okay, look, kid, I don't know what happened back there, but Brenda Soulful has been with us for 20 years. Her word is bond. If she said you were disruptive, then you were disruptive. I can't put you back on that flight. It's already closed out." "But she lied," Maya said, her voice small. I just wanted to pre-board, like I was told to." "I'm sure you did," Richard said, his tone saturated with disbelief. "Look, I can try to get you on the 10:30 a.m. flight, but it's standby. Looks full. You'll probably be routed through Detroit. Get into LaGuardia around 6 p.m. 6 p.m.? Maya's heart sank. "My audition is at 2 p.m. I'll miss it." "Well, that's unfortunate," Richard said, tapping on his computer. "But you should have thought of that before you gave the gate agent a hard time. Policy is policy." The officers, satisfied this was no longer a police matter, tipped their hats and left. Maya was alone in the sterile room with a man who had already judged and convicted her. Can I just use my phone?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Fine. I'll see what I can do about the 10:30. Richard left, closing the door. Maya collapsed into a plastic chair. The tears came in a torrent now, silent, angry sobs. She had done everything right. She was polite. She was prepared. And it didn't matter, because Brenda looked at her and decided. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. "Me. Mom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They wouldn't let me board. The agent lied and said I was disruptive. They called the police on me. I'm in an office. I missed the flight. I'm going to miss Juilliard. She hit send. For a moment, there was no reply. Maya stared at the delivered text, her world collapsing. And then, her phone rang. It wasn't a text back. It was a call. The caller ID was Mom's secure line. She swiped to answer, her voice thick. Mom, The voice that came through the speaker was not the warm, comforting mom voice. It was a different voice. It was the voice that commanded boardrooms, that silenced senators, that ran a 70,000-person federal agency. It was the voice of Secretary Alani Davis. Maya, stop crying. Take a deep breath. The voice was calm, but it was as cold and sharp as surgical steel. Give me the facts. Gate number, airline, flight number, and the names of the employees, all of them. Global West, Flight 1412, Gate B19, Maya sniffled. The gate agent was Brenda Soulful. The other one was Scott Palmer. The manager here is Richard Jenkins. Got it, Alani said. Did the police put their hands on you? No. They were okay. They just escorted me. Good. Stay in that office. Do not leave. Do not speak to anyone. I am handling this. Do you understand me, Maya? Yes, ma'am. But Juilliard. We will deal with Juilliard later. Right now I am dealing with Global West. There was a muffled sound, as if Alani had covered the phone. Maya heard her mother's voice, distant but clear, speaking to someone else. Jessica, the voice said, get me Mark Heston, the CEO of Global West Airlines. I don't care if he's in a meeting. I don't care if he's on a plane. Get him on the phone in the next 5 minutes and get General Counsel Thomas Bryant on the line. I want a full DOT investigation launched into Global West discriminatory practices, effective right now. Start with the Atlanta hub. I want every complaint filed against them in the last 24 months on my desk by noon. The line went quiet for a second. Then her mother's voice was back, directly in her ear. Maya, I have to go. Mom, what's going to happen? What's going to happen, Secretary Davis said, her voice a flat, deadly promise, is that these people are about to learn what the word accountability means. Sit tight. I love you. The line clicked dead. Maya sat in the sterile white room, her tears suddenly dry. She looked at her cello case, leaning against the wall. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed direction. Back at Gate B19, Brenda Soulful was feeling good. The flight was boarded, the door was closed. She was running 3 minutes ahead of schedule. She high-fived Scott. See? That's how you handle them, Brenda said, sipping her diet soda. Give them an inch. They take a mile. You gotta be firm. You really shut her down, Scott said, laughing. The look on her face when Miller and Washington showed up. Priceless. She'll think twice next time she tries to pull a fast one, Brenda said, tidying her stack of paperwork. That's when the gate phone rang, the insistent shrill beep that usually meant a last-minute seat change. Brenda snatched it up, her customer service voice snapping back into place. Global West Gate B19, this is Brenda. On the other end was Richard Jenkins, the station manager. But his voice wasn't the usual harried monotone. It was high-pitched. It was panicked. Brenda, what in God's name did you do? Brenda bristled. What are you talking about, Richard? I boarded my flight. I handled a non-compliant passenger. I followed the book. You followed the book? You followed the book? Richard sounded like he was hyperventilating. Brenda, who was the passenger? The one you kicked off. The girl with the cello. Some kid, Davis, Maya Davis. Why? Is she trying to file a complaint? Let her. It's my word against a 17-year-old. There was a heavy wheezing sound on the other end. Brenda, you are an idiot. A catastrophic, world-breaking idiot. Do you have any idea who Maya Davis is? Brenda's smugness faltered. What? No. A musician. A student. Who cares? Her mother, Brenda. Her mother. I just got a call from Mark Heston. Not his assistant. Not the VP of operations. The CEO of this entire airline. And he wasn't calling from his office. He was calling from his private jet, where he was woken up from a dead sleep. Brenda's stomach turned to ice. What? What does her mother have to do with... Her mother, Richard said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper, is Alani Davis, the Secretary of Transportation, the head of the DOT, the woman who controls our landing slots, our routes, our operating licenses, and the fines that can put us out of business. Scott, who had been listening, went a color Maya would later describe as unbleached linen. Brenda dropped the phone. It clattered against the console, swinging by its cord. Brenda? Richard's tiny, tinny voice yelled from the earpiece. Brenda, pick up the phone. The CEO wants you and Scott off the floor. Now, go to my office. And do not, under any circumstances, speak to anyone. Oh, God. Brenda, he's on his way here. Heston is diverting his jet to Atlanta. Brenda stared at Scott. Scott stared at Brenda. The gate, so full of triumph moments before, was suddenly a tomb. Scott, Brenda whispered, her hands shaking, we were just following policy. You were following policy, Scott stammered, already backing away, his eyes wide with terror. I just backed you up. I just made the call you told me to make. This is on you, Brenda. This is all on you. He grabbed his bag and practically ran from the podium, leaving Brenda alone with the swinging, screaming phone. Meanwhile, in the small, sterile office, Maya Davis heard a keycard swipe. The door opened. It was Richard Jenkins. His face was pale, his shirt soaked with sweat. He was holding a bottle of water and a first-class amenities kit. Miss Davis, he said, his voice trembling, my name is Richard Jenkins. I am the station manager here in Atlanta, and I want to offer my most profound, my deepest apologies for the misunderstanding at the gate. He practically bowed. Misunderstanding? Maya asked, her voice cold. A terrible, terrible mistake. A training issue with our staff. Please, let me take you to our first-class lounge. We have a private suite for you. Can I get you anything? A hot meal? Coffee? I want to go to New York, Maya said. I have an audition. Yes, of course, absolutely, Richard was frantic. We can't get you on 1412. It's already pushed back. But we are holding the 7 a.m. flight to JFK. We're clearing a seat for you. First class, of course, and for your magnificent instrument. We will have a private car waiting for you at JFK to take you anywhere in the city. Absolutely free of charge. And here, he thrust a tablet at her. We've credited your account with 200,000 frequent flyer miles, and we will be refunding the cost of all your tickets. Please, just please. Maya looked at the groveling man, the man who, 20 minutes earlier, had dismissed her, called her a liar, and told her she should have thought of that before missing her audition. She stood up, her 5'7" frame suddenly feeling 10 feet tall. Where is the lounge? She asked. This way, Miss Davis. Right this way. Please, let me carry your cello. No, Maya said, pulling the case away from his grasping hands. I'll carry it myself. She walked out of the office, Richard Jenkins trailing behind her like a terrified servant, past the stunned customer service agents, and toward the elevators to the first-class lounge. The balance of power had not just shifted, it had been annihilated. The call from Secretary Alani Davis to Mark Heston, CEO of Global West, was not a long one. It was, by all accounts, brutally short. Secretary Davis did not yell. She did not threaten. She spoke in the calm, measured tone of a surgeon explaining an amputation. She relayed the facts as her 17-year-old daughter had told them to her. She listed the names: Brenda Soulful, Scott Palmer, Richard Jenkins. She noted the time, the flight number, and the gate. Mr. Heston, she concluded, her voice like ice, my daughter was racially profiled, lied about, and humiliated by your staff. She was then denied access to a service she paid for. This is, by my count, a violation of at least 4 federal statutes, not to mention your own contract of carriage. This is, however, no longer a customer service issue. This is a DOT matter. Heston, who was worth 9 figures, stammered. Secretary Davis, Alani, I am horrified. just horrified. This is not who we are. I will personally see to it that these employees are— Save it, Secretary Davis cut him off. I have no interest in your performative apologies. You should know that as of 10 minutes ago, I have instructed my general counsel to open a formal, top-to-bottom investigation into Global West's pattern of discriminatory complaints. My daughter's incident is merely the catalyst. I suspect it's the tip of a very large, very rotten iceberg. Heston's blood ran cold. A DOT investigation was not a slap on the wrist. It was a corporate colonoscopy. It meant auditors, fines, and congressional hearings. Secretary, Alani, please, we can handle this. I'll fire them. I'll fire the station manager. I'll issue a public apology to you and to Maya. We can make a donation to a charity of your choice. Mr. Heston, Alani said, my daughter is not a political chit, and this is not a negotiation. The investigation is open. You and your legal team will be hearing from General Counsel Thomas Bryant. I suggest you get your house in order. Good day. She hung up. Heston, sitting in his Gulfstream, yelled for his pilot to divert to Atlanta. Then he called Richard Jenkins, a man he had never spoken to in his life, and delivered the panicked, furious message that sent the station manager scrambling. While Maya was being ushered into the first-class lounge, Brenda Soulful and Scott Palmer were sitting in Richard's now empty office, the one Maya had just vacated. The silence was deafening. This is a mistake, Brenda kept muttering, her hands twisting in her lap. She can't do that. It's a conflict of interest. Her daughter, she's using her power. We can sue. Scott just stared at the wall. Sue? Sue the Secretary of Transportation? Are you insane? We're fired, Brenda. We're done. My career, 10 years. It's over. It was your word against hers, Brenda shrieked, her voice cracking. You were supposed to back me. We just say she was violent, that she pushed me. She didn't push you, Brenda, Scott finally yelled back. And there were 50 people watching. There were phones. You don't think they're checking the security cameras right now? You don't think Heston himself is watching the tape? The door opened. It wasn't Richard. It was two stern-looking individuals in dark suits from Global West Corporate Security, accompanied by Diana Wallace, the head of Atlanta HR. Brenda Soulful? Scott Palmer? Diana said, her voice flat. She was holding two white envelopes. You are both suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Please surrender your airline identification and all company property. Suspended? Brenda gasped. For what? For doing my job? For the incident at Gate B19, Diana said, reading from a script. You are not to access any company systems. You are not to speak to any other employees. You are to be escorted from the property. You will be contacted by our legal team. This is because of her. Because of her mother. Brenda was frantic. This is retaliation. It's not fair. Fairness, Diana said, her eyes dead, is no longer part of this conversation. Your badges, please. Scott handed his over, defeated. Brenda refused, clutching hers to her chest. No, I've been here 22 years. I have rights. One of the security guards stepped forward. Ma'am, you can give us the badge or we can take it, and you can walk out or we can escort you. The outcome is the same. Brenda looked at the guard, at Diana, at the quivering wreck of Scott Palmer. The power she had wielded so absolutely at Gate B19 was gone. It had evaporated in a single phone call. She tore the badge and lanyard from her neck, threw it on the desk, and stormed out, shoving past the security guard. I'm calling my union rep. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. No one replied. They just watched her go. Diana Wallace sighed and looked at Scott. Mr. Palmer, a word of advice? Scott looked up, his eyes pleading. I just did what she said. Don't, Diana said. Just don't. Your only chance, your one chance, is to tell the truth. To everyone. The company. The dot. Tell them exactly what happened, what she said, what you said. Don't try to cover for her. Don't try to cover for yourself, because they already know. They have the video. The, the video, the passenger, the one who was filming, he's a platinum medallion member. He sent his video directly to the CEO's office. He was appalled. Said it was the worst case of customer abuse he'd ever seen. Scott's face crumpled. He finally understood. It wasn't just the secretary's daughter. They had been caught cold by a random passenger. The secretary's involvement just meant that instead of a slap on the wrist, the hammer of God was coming down. "Tell the truth, Scott," Diana said, her voice softening just a fraction. "It's the only play you have left." Scott nodded dumbly. He was escorted out a side entrance, past the baggage handlers, a ghost in his own airport. The story did not stay contained within Global West Airlines for long. By 9 a.m., Sarah Jensen, an investigative reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, got a tip from a source in the baggage handlers union. "You won't believe this," the source said. "Heston's in town, unannounced. Fired Brenda Soulful from B-Concourse. Pulled her right off the floor. Word is she kicked some VIP's kid off a flight." "Brenda Soulful?" Sarah said, her journalistic senses tingling. "I know that name. She's got a file of complaints a mile long. Gatekeeper Brenda." "Who was the kid?" "That's the crazy part," the source said. "Nobody's saying. But the whole exec row is in lockdown. They're saying the DOT is involved." That was the key. Sarah started digging. She connected DOT with VIP. Who was the ultimate DOT VIP? Secretary Alani Davis. She cross-referenced airport manifests with known schedules. Secretary Davis was in D.C. But did she have a family? A quick search revealed a 17-year-old daughter, Maya. A cello prodigy. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Oh my God, she was flying to New York. There's a major Juilliard event this weekend." She found the passenger video, which had been posted to Twitter by the Platinum Medallion member and was just starting to gain traction. The video was damning. It didn't have sound, but it didn't need it. You could see Brenda's dismissive wave. You could see Maya's polite, desperate pleading. You could see Scott's smirk. And you could see the police arriving. The caption, "Disgusted by Global West. Gate agent Brenda at ATL B-19 just called the cops on a polite teenage girl, a young black woman, for daring to ask to pre-board. All she had was a cello. This is abuse." By 10 a.m., Sarah Jensen published her story. By noon, Global West, Brenda Soulful, and Maya Davis were the top 3 trending topics on Twitter. The story was everywhere. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. The narrative was irresistible. Airline Karen bullies black teen, finds out her mom is Secretary of Transportation. Global West's stock, which had opened strong, began to tumble. Mark Heston, who had just finished a 2-hour, one-sided conversation with DOT General Counsel Thomas Bryant, was in full-blown panic mode. The investigation was real. The DOT was demanding everything. All customer complaints for 5 years, all internal HR files related to discrimination, all training manuals, and the complete unedited employee files of Brenda Soulful and Scott Palmer. And that's where they found the real rot. Brenda's file was a horror show. 22 years, 48 formal customer complaints. 39 of those complaints were from passengers of color. 12 involved her calling security on minority passengers for disruptive behavior. In every single case, her station manager, Richard Jenkins, had backed her up, and the complaint was dismissed as unfounded. Scott Palmer's file was shorter, but telling. He had been counseled 3 times for inappropriate language and for antagonizing customers. He had been transferred from the check-in counter to the gate after a particularly nasty incident with a passenger in a hijab. Richard Jenkins, the manager, had been signing off on this behavior for a decade. He was part of the rot. The DOT investigation, now armed with this internal data, expanded. They didn't just want records, they wanted depositions. They subpoenaed all 3. Richard Jenkins was fired by 3 p.m. He was given a cardboard box and 10 minutes to clear his desk. Brenda Soulful at home was watching herself on CNN. Her face, twisted in a sneer, was on a loop. Her phone was ringing with calls from reporters. Her union rep finally called back. "Brenda, this is bad." The rep, a man named Tom, said, This isn't a standard grievance. The video it's just awful. And the company, they're not fighting this. But she threatened me. She was unstable. Brenda shrieked into the phone. Brenda, stop. Stop right now. The passenger's video has audio. He was standing right there. We can hear everything. You told her you people are always trying to bend the rules. You told her to go to the back of the line. She never once raised her voice. You lied. You lied to the police. You lied to your manager. You're done. The union, we can't represent you on this. You're dropping me? We are advising you to retain a criminal defense attorney, as there is some talk the DA might look at this for filing a false police report. Good luck, Brenda. The line went dead. Brenda Soulful was alone, but the karma train was not done. It was just picking up speed. The focus of the DOT and the media began to shift. It was no longer just about one racist gate agent. It was about a system. How could a woman like Brenda Soulful keep her job for 22 years? Why was a manager like Richard Jenkins promoted? Why was a man like Scott Palmer just shuffled around? The answer, as the DOT investigation found, was that Global West had an unofficial, unwritten policy. Gate agents were given bonuses based on on-time departures. Pre-boarding, special requests, and passengers who took too long were seen as a threat to that bonus. Agents like Brenda were rewarded for being firm, and the people they were firm with, the people least likely to have the power to fight back, were disproportionately poor, non-native English speakers and people of color. Maya Davis, the daughter of a high-status academic, flying to a Juilliard audition, was an anomaly. But Brenda hadn't seen that. She had only seen a black girl with a big case, and she had reacted from her deep-seated 22-year-old script of practiced bigotry. She just picked the wrong one. 6 weeks later, the atmosphere in room 2167 of the Rayburn House office building was not one of legislative boredom. It was a coliseum. The Klieg lights of a dozen news cameras were blazing, turning the ornate wood-paneled hearing room into a sweatbox. The press gallery was standing room only. C-SPAN was carrying it live. The title of the hearing, projected on screens behind the dais, was stark. A failure of oversight, discriminatory practices in the American airline industry. The star witness, seated alone at the long witness table, was Mark Heston. The CEO of Global West Airlines looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month. His $5,000 Brioni suit hung on him. His face was a pale, doughy mask of controlled terror, and a single bead of sweat traced a path from his hairline to his starched collar. The committee chairman, a formidable congressman from Texas named Samuel Rayburn, leaned into his microphone. He was known for his folksy drawl, a linguistic tool he used to gut witnesses before they knew they were bleeding. Mr. Heston, Rayburn began, we have here a preliminary report from the Department of Transportation. Now, I'm just a simple country lawyer, but these numbers, they're just something. It says here that in the last 3 years, your airline, Global West, has received 1,245 actionable complaints of discrimination, and your company, your people, saw fit to dismiss 1,210 of them as unfounded. That's a 97% dismissal rate. You're batting 1,000, son. Can you explain that to the American people? Heston swallowed, his throat clicking. Congressman Rayburn, members of the committee, thank you. We at Global West believe in empowering our frontline employees. We trust them to make judgment calls in real time. Our systems, in this case, were clearly lacking. Lacking? Mr. Heston, they weren't lacking. They were complicit, snapped a congresswoman from California. This report lists a pattern. A decorated Army captain, a black man, accused of faking his military ID by your staff. A diabetic woman denied pre-boarding to take her insulin because your agent said she didn't look sick. A mother in a hijab pulled from a flight because your crew felt uncomfortable. You don't just have a bad apple, Mr. Heston. You have a rotten orchard. You rewarded this behavior. That is an unfair characterization, Heston stammered, but his voice was weak. Is it? Rayburn said, his eyes flat. In the front row of the gallery, directly in Heston's line of sight, sat Secretary of Transportation Alani Davis. She was a picture of absolute stillness. She wore a simple dark blue suit. She held no papers, no phone. Her hands were folded in her lap. She had not said a word. She had ethically recused herself from the DOT's direct investigation, handing it over to her general counsel, Thomas Bryant, who sat 2 chairs down. But her presence was the entire reason this hearing was happening. She was a silent, powerful statue of judgment, and her gaze never left Mark Heston's face. "Mr. Heston," the chairman continued, "we've heard from you, but the committee felt it was important to hear from someone on the front lines, someone from that empowered staff you're so proud of." A side door opened. The cameras swiveled, their motors a high-pitched whine. "The committee now calls Mr. Scott Palmer." Mark Heston's blood turned to ice. His legal team sitting behind him began whispering frantically. They hadn't been told about this. Scott Palmer, dressed in a rumpled, off-the-rack suit from Men's Warehouse, looked like he was walking to his own execution. He was pale, trembling, and his eyes were red-rimmed. He sat at the witness table, a few feet from Heston, and was sworn in. "Mr. Palmer," the chairman said, his voice now gentle, "you were a gate agent for Global West Airlines at the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta hub. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Scott whispered. "And you were fired 6 weeks ago for your involvement in the incident concerning Miss Maya Davis. Is that also correct?" "Yes, sir." "Mr. Palmer, you are here today under a plea agreement with the Department of Justice for, let's see, filing a false report to law enforcement and a few other things. In exchange for your full and truthful testimony, you have been granted immunity. Is that your understanding?" "Yes, sir," Scott said, his voice cracking. He had done as the HR executive, Diana Wallace, had advised. He had told the truth, the whole ugly truth, to the DOT and the DOJ. He had saved himself from prison, but in doing so, he had to light his former colleagues and his entire company on fire. "Mr. Palmer," the chairman said, "tell us about the culture at the Atlanta hub. Tell us about gatekeeping." Scott took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at Heston, who refused to meet his gaze. He looked at Alani Davis, who simply watched. It was a thing," Scott began, his voice barely audible. "Brenda Soulful, she trained us. She called it protecting the integrity of the gate. That's the phrase she used. It meant turning away people who didn't look right. People who she said looked like they were scamming, trying to get on early or get a free upgrade they didn't deserve." "And who didn't look right, Mr. Palmer?" the congresswoman from California asked. Scott's eyes filled with tears. It was young people, black passengers, Hispanic passengers, people with headscarves, anyone who didn't look like they belonged in first class. We had codes for it in our internal chat system. We'd send a code 8 if we had a passenger we thought was a problem. "A code 8, the chairman repeated. "And did you use this code on the morning of October 18th? "Yes, sir." "Mr. Chairman," a staffer interrupted, "we have that internal chat log provided by Mr. Palmer to the DOT. I ask that it be submitted for the record." "So ordered." The log flashed up on the big screens. The timestamp was 5:48 a.m. Brenda S. "Ugh, another one at B19. Watch me handle this." Scott P. LOL. "A real problem?" Brenda S. "A code 8, big one. Think she's got a body in that box?" Scott P. "Shut her down." Brenda S. "Already on it. Gonna make this one an example. Protect the gate." A wave of gasps and muttered curses rippled through the hearing room. Mark Heston closed his eyes. One of his lawyers put his head in his hands. Secretary Davis did not move. "An example?" the chairman said, his voice dripping with acid. What did she mean by that, Mr. Palmer?" And then Scott Palmer broke. The dam of his career, his lies, his cowardice, it just shattered. She, she, she wanted to make the girl cry, he sobbed, the words tumbling out. She, she, she said that. After. She said, it's the only way they learn. She, she was proud of it. She, she, she told me to call the police. And I, I did it. I knew the girl was polite. I knew she had the pre-board. I saw her ticket. I saw the email on her phone. And I backed Brenda. I told the police the girl was non-compliant. I lied to them. He looked past the committee, past the cameras, his eyes finding Eleni Davis in the front row. I didn't want Brenda to turn on me, he wailed. She'd get you fired. Richard, our manager, he promoted her for it. He called her his gate warrior. I'm so sorry. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Scott Palmer dissolved, burying his face in his hands, his body racked with the gut-wrenching, ugly sobs of a man who had not only lost everything, but knew in his bones that he absolutely deserved to. The hearing room was in stunned silence. The only sound was Scott's weeping and the furious clicking of cameras. The karma was complete. It wasn't just a firing. It was a public vivisection, broadcast on national television. The fallout was immediate and biblical. While Scott was still being escorted from the room, one of Mark Heston's lawyers quietly passed him a folded note. Heston read it, his face ashen. He nodded once, numbly. The chairman, who had been passed a similar note, tapped his microphone. The committee has just been informed, he said, that Mr. Mark Heston has tendered his resignation as CEO of Global West Airlines, effective immediately. The company's stock, which had been in free fall, plunged another 12 points in after-hours trading. In the weeks that followed, the rest of the dominoes fell. The DOT, armed with Palmer's testimony and the chat logs, hit Global West with a $150 million fine, the largest in aviation history for discriminatory practices. They were also placed under a 10-year federal consent decree, a crippling sentence that meant federal monitors would be placed inside their corporate offices, with veto power over hiring, training protocols, and all customer service policies. Richard Jenkins, the station manager who had fostered the rotten orchard, was blacklisted. He lost his pension. He tried to get a job with a small, regional carrier, but his name was poison. The last anyone heard, he was selling timeshares in Orlando, his career in aviation over forever. And Brenda Soulful? Gatekeeper Brenda became a national pariah. Her face was a meme for racism and Karen culture. She tried to sue Global West for wrongful termination. A federal judge threw the case out in summary judgment, citing the overwhelming and frankly disgusting evidence of her gross misconduct. She tried a GoFundMe for her legal defense, which was shut down after raising $42. She changed her name, but it was too late. She was last seen working the night shift at a Dollar General in rural Alabama, bagging cheap plastic goods, a ghost of her former self, forever looking over her shoulder. And Maya Davis. Her mother had indeed handled Juilliard. The call had been short, a masterclass in controlled power. This is Eleni Davis. I'm calling not as Secretary of Transportation, but as a mother. My daughter Maya was unfortunately and wrongfully detained by an airline and has missed her audition. The panic on the other end of the line was audible. Maya was given a new, private audition time for the very next day. She flew to New York, first class, on a different airline. She walked into the audition room. The panel of 5, including the legendary Itzhak Perlman, knew. Of course they knew. The story was everywhere. They tried to look impartial, but Maya could feel their pity, their curiosity. She knew they were wondering if she was just a charity case, a favor to a powerful woman. She had to prove them wrong. She sat. She took her 19th century cello from its case. She took a deep, centering breath, and then she played. She played Bach's Cello Suite No. 3. She didn't just play it, she attacked it. All the rage from Gate B-19, all the humiliation, the cold fear of the police, the burning tears, and the fiery, resilient spirit of her mother. She poured all of it into the music. The sound that came from her instrument was not just technically perfect. It was raw, powerful and alive with a pain and strength that no 17-year-old should possess. When she finished, the room was utterly silent. Itzhak Perlman looked at his colleagues, then back at Maya. He smiled, a slow, genuine smile. "Well," he said, his voice filling the room, "that was quite something. Welcome to Juilliard, Miss Davis." The story ends not in Congress but in a concert hall 1 year later. Alice Tully Hall at Lincoln Center. Maya Davis, now a 19-year-old rising star, her name known for her talent, not her trauma, is a featured soloist. In the front row, center orchestra, sits Alani Davis. She is not Secretary Davis tonight. She's just mom. She watches her daughter, poised, powerful, and incandescently free, take her bow. The hall erupts in a standing ovation. Alani smiles, the first true, unguarded smile she's had in a year. The rules, she thought, are there to protect everyone. But accountability is what you use, with the precision of a surgeon, when the rules are not enough. This wasn't just a story about a bad day at the airport. It was a story about power, the petty power a gate agent can wield, and the real, systemic power that holds them accountable. Maya Davis got her justice, but her mother, Secretary Alani Davis, ensured the system itself faced a reckoning. The fines, the firings, the public humiliation, that was karma. But the real change? That was the new set of rules, the consent decree, the monitors, and the training, all designed to ensure a Brenda can never again use her small slice of authority to humiliate a Maya. But does it work? That's up to all of us. The cameras on our phones are the new checks and balances. If you've seen something like this, share your story in the comments. And if you believe that accountability, no matter how high up, is what truly matters, then like this video, share it with everyone you know, and subscribe for more true stories of justice being served.